Welcome, everyone. I can see people are all coming in, so thank you for joining us. Welcome to Communicate on the road to COP15 and COP26. Thank you for joining us in this session. Our title is Having More Difficult Conversations in Difficult Times. My name is Sharon. I'm the current CEO at ASDC, the membership organisation for UK science centres and science museums. And I just have to say, I am so interested to be part of this session. As we've heard about in the keynote panel this morning, it's a topic that is so relevant, not only following the past 18 months, but urgent as we as environmental scientists and communicators and advocates and all you activists out there, we must face together, but we have to face it in the future. And it is coming at a cost for our teams, for our organizations, at work, and of course, personally. There's no question, moment to moment, that colleagues that you might be working with, or perhaps you yourself, may be feeling this increase in burden becoming a little unbearable to carry. So I'm delighted to welcome Ali Crowther to talk to us and to discuss the how, how we keep talking openly and maturely, and as it says in the blurb for this session, to keep us mentally and emotionally safe and healthy. Now, before we start, we do have a quick plan just to show you around here. Please do use the chat, say who you are, shout out, say hello, share relevant links, resources. It's not a problem for Communicate at all to talk in the chat, which is great. If you use the session chat, if you use the event chat, you're sending your chat across the conference so everyone can hear it, which might be what you want to do, but most often it is not. So I will have an eye on the chat. However, I think probably if you have a question, there is a Q&A tab. It might be that you have a similar question to something that's already been asked. That's fine. If it's not quite the same, type in your question, or you can upvote other people's questions. And in that way, if time is tight at the end, I can bring the most popular questions to Alison. Now, the majority of questions will come at the end. Ali is also happy for me to butt in mid-flow to bring a relevant question to her at the right time. So we'll see how that goes. But please do put down your questions as and when they come to you. Just as a heads up, your question may be slightly importantly nuanced, which is hard to get across in a couple of sentences. So it may be that we invite you up onto stage. So if we have time, just to enable a bit of conversation. If this fills you with absolute dread, couldn't stand to be unmuted or emerge in full facial glory, then do just ask your question, but ask us anonymously, which is always a good option. Actually, it enables people to be as honest as you like. So to the main event. For those of you who don't know Alison Crowther, she has worked for 25 years training and facilitating environmental conflict resolution. She has an academic background in music, environmental science and public health and psychology. She's been involved with various coaching and specialist courses and now works with teams, communities and across the business sector on ethical, scientific and environmental issues. So she's incredibly talented and experienced at using small steps or games, conversations which shift but don't feel too hard, and all the skills of positive psychology to support real lasting change for groups and for individuals. So Ali, thank you for bringing this important and delicate conversation out into the open at the start of this conference, and it's over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Sharon. And I'm looking forward to this too. The first thing I'd love to know is if we've got any people here that were also at the last event that I ran with at Communicate last year, because some of this is going to start off similar and then it's going to be very different. So if you were here before, could you just put yes or before or something like that in the chat? I'm going to use the chat as a way of listening to you. Oh, good. Roddy, nice to see you. Anybody else? It doesn't matter if not. If you were, that would be brilliant to hear. Okay, no, but this is great. This is great. So more difficult conversations. Some of it's going to be the same and some of it is going to be in a little bit more depth. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Roddy, you're going to recognize this slide. Sam, could you show the slides, please? Thank you. Brilliant. Oh, you can get over that one. Next slide. Thank you. So this is we're going to start on the chat immediately. I love to hear from you. So we're going to start with what is trauma. This talk is going to end up with you being able to help yourselves. But in order to understand what is it that makes us anxious at work, what is it that makes us anxious about, about climate? So I have certainly woken up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding and thinking, oh, I've got to move. Is my house going to be flooded? This kind of thing, because I know that policy is going much slower than it needs to. I've been doing this for 30 years. And often we will get that, and then that disturbs our sleep, and then we can get worried about not sleeping, and these things kind of go down and down. So it would be really great for us to understand what that looks like, what is going on in our brains, and that's where we're going to start off. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? There are lots of these different kinds of traumas. A personal one-off trauma might be, and write that in the chat. What might that be? What does it look like? Somebody will start and then you'll get the idea. Oh, I'm wondering if I'm in the right chat. I am in the right chat. There we go. There we go. Yes. Yeah, a shocking event, a single shocking event, a death of a parent. Death of a parent may go into the next one. That's personal and ongoing, but it also may, obviously in the moment as well. And any other things? But those are good examples for now. Yeah, a breakup, absolutely. Yes, so the unprocessed emotions after another event, definitely. Being mugged is a really excellent one. Yes, it's one-off, unlikely to happen again, and it happened to you. So these are personal. The next one, we've actually got a couple of examples of this already. Personal ongoing trauma. What might that be? It's personal to you, but it hangs around in your psyche. Yes, great one. Illness and the loss of a child. These excellent examples. Yes, abusive relationships. So they're the kind of things that maybe you can talk about to begin with, and then you just feel, I'm being boring. I can't talk about this all the time to everybody, although it doesn't seem to be going away at quite the speed everybody else would wish it were. That's a personal ongoing trauma. A collective trauma, something that's happened to a group of people. Can you give me an example of one of those? A natural disaster, exactly. Yes, tsunami, COVID. Yeah, COVID, absolutely. A war, absolutely, those kinds of things. Now, on to the next one, intergenerational trauma. Have you come across that? Something where it's just been passed down and down and down. Are there any examples of that one that you can think of? Yeah, absolutely, the Holocaust. We're still living with that. Oppression in a general way. Yeah, oppression of all kinds. Colonialism. Yes, that's a great one. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. Yes, so that's good examples. So alcoholism, that's a very interesting one, but yes, that is also true. Now, systemic trauma, something where the whole system is involved. So we're going on to the next one. This is the last one. You can describe these in different ways, but for now, we're just going to look at all of these different kinds. Inequality, yes. Poverty, the system is somehow incorrect and not serving us and is causing some of us to have trauma, absolutely. The system could be a smaller system. It could be, I told the story last time of my postman just coming and being sort of bowed. Really, I noticed, and I said, what's wrong? And he said, it's just all this stuff at work. And, when the post office was going through a really difficult time last year, just before COVID, that it affected that whole system. But as a system, it's a discrete system, but they were all very, it hurt inside. It's another kind of system, gender politics, and also the climate system and how that is all affecting us as well. Great. Okay. Could I have the next slide, Sam? So what you've said. There it is. Yes, exactly all of those things that you've just said. Another one in intergenerational trauma is sort of family secrets, things that have been kept. Now, some issues cover all of these. What psychologists tend to say is that the personal ones, the two at the top that have the word personal, what the word is they use is poisonous. They're more poisonous to us because it happens to us, the individual. It affects our identity. And so that's quite dangerous. bizarrely, collective trauma, things that seem to be a lot worse, because we're going through it with loved ones, we're going through it and with a huge group of people, people understand us, we can look at them and say, yeah, I've got you, I understand. Having that understanding actually makes these ones slightly less bad in the way that it affects us. However, they're all awful. Right, so let's go on to the, no, I was going to say, so something like racism can be all of these, and that is what makes it so awful. It can be personal, a one-off, somebody saying something horrible to a child on the way to school. It can be ongoing, you know, that happening all the time. Collective trauma, what we as our race understand, intergenerational, you know, that history of slavery, and then systemic, you know, the whole system is just corrupt in that way. The system is racist. We know that, we can see that. So when it's all of them, that is a very, very big thing to hold. Okay, so this is what affects us. Now, let's go on to the next slide, Sam. Thank you. So let's just look at a really simple example of a one-off trauma. I think this is the very first one that somebody said. It was a shocking event. So a shocking event could be something like a car crash. That's a shocking event. It's one thing, it's going to happen, and then that's done. What happens with our brains is that there are three sections. There's the reptilian brain, which is back here, the red one, which is the bit that reacts and responds. The emotional brain in the middle, which is the thinking and feeling brain. And then we've got the neocortex, the sort of the much bigger bit, which is what we got when we were able to cook food. We were able to take in so many nutrients and to be able to grow more quickly. And we grew this bit. And that helped us get more food and so on. So it's a sort of a virtuous circle that created that thinking brain. Now, what we really want to see is the thinking brain doing the filing. But sometimes when we have a shock to our system, it's the reptilian brain that actually takes over the filing. So if we have a situation where we're in a situation and it was really dangerous, really suddenly, the brain takes a snapshot of what was going on and says, right, that was really dangerous. I'm going to avoid that at all costs in the future. And the brain is going to tell the body in no uncertain terms that is to be avoided and to run away and to go and hide, or to hit whatever that thing is when we have that situation again. So the phrase is what fires together. So the brain has been fired up by this crash, wires together. So now it's learned, and it's the reptilian brain that has learned, because it's done that reacting. It's not stored in the prefrontal cortex in here, which is where we would like it to be stored. So there's going to be a reaction in our bodies that sometimes our brain says, why is that going on? And we can't quite work it out. So I adopted a little boy, and he has lots of these. They're called triggers, and it's to do with things that have happened in the past. And he couldn't even speak or necessarily understand language, but still his brain took in a lot of stuff that he thought were dangerous. And so now we call those triggers, and I have to find those out. So it's a kind of a finding out episode, like paleontology. I've got to really excavate and see what's going on in there, and notice if he loses it at some point, really have a snapshot of that and go, what was it? What was here that he's responded to? What's made him freeze? What's made him angry? And as we go through our lives, and as we, you may be recognizing some of this in your family, as we go through our lives and with our family, and also through in our work, we're going to find a lot more of this coming up, and it will be to do with climate often, and fear. So not necessarily a trauma of the kind that I'm talking about there, but it will be the other kinds of trauma, systemic, and this a great weight that's on us. Okay, so the next part is all about how to alleviate that weight, and what you can do as somebody who is responsible, or somebody who's now beginning to understand this, what you can do for yourself and for other people. Okay, Sam, next one, please. Okay, so this is the link to environment. Why do we feel these things? I mean, it's kind of pretty obvious by now, but for those of us who work in the environment, and our identity is often very much wound up with our work. We believe it it's not a question of belief, is it? We know it. I mean, it's scientific. We have to look after the world because the world looks after us. The world is more important to us. It's our life support system. And getting that in our heads and understanding that then makes it so, so precious. So we really deeply understand that in a way that other people perhaps don't. And that's a real worry when those people are the ones with the money and the power. So I would say when nature takes a knock, we take a knock, and we can become really depleted and hurt. If we've been working with species, they become extinct. They are getting, there are many bad stories. There are some lovely good stories, but we know that isn't a backdrop of a climate which is getting warmer. So how long is that going to be the case? But the important thing that it's crucial to look after ourselves and each other. And so the next bit is all about that. And then you can begin to have the skills of having difficult conversations, and even talk about trauma and so on. Next slide, please, Sam.
Ali, before we move on, there was there's a question probably relating to the way in which your brain is processing information, and how this might relate to mindfulness and being in nature as a solution.
That I'm coming on to.
Aha.
That's great. I think I've probably said enough on that. I could spend the whole day on that slide, frankly, but I can't right now. But we are exactly coming on to that. So brilliant. Now, I just wanted you to think about what you might see in your teams when you are at work. What might you see which indicates that people are not feeling great? So we did this in a fair last year, and these were kind of the answers that came up. So people could be withdrawn and hopeless, also seemingly irrationally angry. It's like they're becoming really difficult to manage. Fixed on certain ideas, and we'll see why that will be in a second. And they'll have quick changes of behavior because there's so much data. We think this. No, actually that. No, actually there's something else that's more important. And it's really, really difficult. And then also things like self-sabotaging, which is just a sort of a pure trauma response. So next slide, please. And this is where it starts getting nice. Okay, so you have a secret friend. And you will know this if you have held a baby and that baby looks into your face, and they smile. And these are the things, this is the thing that does that. It's called the vagus nerve. And it acts like a caring super agent, like a secret agent, frankly, in your body. It's so long, it goes everywhere. It's the longest nerve in the body. But your thinking brain has nothing to do with it. It doesn't do anything, either giving or taking of information, but your brain does. Parts of your brain do talk to it. And it is effectively the secret agent that goes and tells your brain how you are really feeling. So if you're in a situation which is scary, but you kind of know it's not, but you feel scared, then your brain is still going to be giving scared responses. So if a trigger, in my son, for example, he has a trigger of female police officers, he can be walking to school and be absolutely fine, and then see a female police officer and he will go rigid, okay? Because the thinking brain that knows that he's safe, he's with me, he's holding my hand, for goodness sake, there's nothing can go wrong. His body has remembered, hang on, when I see one of those, bad things happen, I get taken away. And so his body is reacting and it overcomes the logical brain, and then you get this little fight, and then that's really difficult. So that's a very major example of it, and there will be very minor examples as well that people have. So this caring super agent, it's doing this work, and sometimes it overdoes its work. So that's effectively what a trigger is. It's doing a little bit too much, and there are ways that we have of calming your vagus nerve. If it has gone off, and it probably shouldn't have done, then we can calm it. So things like chewing. The vagus nerve is very well linked to you and your thinking brain right here. And so Ollie, it turns out he has been self-medicating with celery since I met him. So he loves celery, and his favorite thing is celery and hummus. So hummus to make it taste nice, and celery. And he has this all the time and wants it all the time. So this is, for 6 years now, celery is the thing. And it's only recently that I really learned, of course, and I really made the connection, of course, it's it's a crunchy food, and that is making him feel good. It's making his brain calm, so he's not in any state of anxiety. So the brain is calming down to where it really should be. Okay, and what can you do? Let's talk about. Oh, this hasn't printed out very well. So one thing so there are lots of things that you can do also to look after your vagus nerve, because it's so important. So you can look after your gut health by vegetables, probiotics. You don't have to have probiotics. Obviously, there are things like all the fermented stuff really works for that. Really good gut health will mean that your vagus nerve is also beautifully looked after. Meditation, I think somebody was saying, meditation, brilliant. That calming, knowing how to calm, knowing that it works means that you have to do less of it later, because your body goes, oh yeah, that thing. It's a bit like what wires together fires together. It learns. So you have to do just a small amount of meditation, and then your body goes, oh yes, I remember, and it will click back into doing what you want it to do and being calmer. Then there are physical things like cold showers to wake up. That really works as well. Talking, laughing, and humming. Did you know that? And this stuff can be it can go through to animals as well. So humming is something that jockeys do on the start line, so that they know that they are very, very relaxed, and also that goes through their legs, and so their horse is relaxed. And this, you will often see jockeys humming on the start line. You won't probably notice that. You might notice it now. I don't know if you can tell really. And it goes straight through their own body and into the body of the horse, and and everything gets sort of relaxed and limber, and they're ready to go. And then things like listening to rhythmical, gentle talking. So my son likes to go to sleep to, I think it's Tony Robinson. He listens to Stig of the Dump, and that is his thing. Lovely, lovely voice, a beautiful rounded voice, rhythmic now because he knows all the words, and that will absolutely lull him to sleep. And the same, I think there's lots and lots of apps you can get now, and there are reasons that works. It's because it really is calming that vagus nerve. Okay, have I got any questions, Sharon, about any of that I've said so far? Because we're going to go on to work that everybody's going to do.
Great. At the moment, no. Carry on.
Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to talk about is clang. Has anybody heard of clang, I wonder? That's happiness. It's about happiness, the clang of happiness. So positive psychology came up with 10 things that we can do to keep ourselves happy. And then a couple of years ago, the National Health Service wanted to have 5, because 5 is a good, it's the numbers on your the numbers of fingers you have, something to think about, and we had a mnemonic, clang, C-L-A-N-G. So Sam, could I have the next slide? So these are, oh, I forgot this one. So yes, I was talking about feeling angry. So what you can do if you are feeling angry, feeling more sort of vibration than is good for that particular situation, you can do things like this: eating crunchy food. You can swing from a bar. You know these bars that people have, the pull-up bars? That really helps because it elongates the joints. Now it turns out that obviously this nerve is going all through everything, and so stretching these joints really works. If you remember when you're a child, the feeling of having somebody pulling around on the floor. This is something that I do with my son. If he's very angry, sort of disproportionately angry about something, I will just say, right, hands or feet, and he'll get down on his tummy or on his back on the floor, and I'll pull him. And that feels nice. And what it's doing is stretching out that nerve, putting everything back in the right place. So any tension that has been held is now not being held anymore, and everything is flowing better. And then another one is putting pressure on arms and legs. So he puts his feet up or hands up, and I put my whole body weight on him, and that's sort of doing the opposite. So that's pushing. Another one is to get him to push a wall away, sort of really imagine that he's being Hulk and push the wall away. A favourite one is the wheelbarrow. So I pick up his legs and then he does a wheelbarrow by putting all his weight through his arms. That really helps. It also begins to explain, doesn't it, why yoga is so good, Pilates. You feel better after one of those sessions. Whether you want to or not, it always happens because of exactly what we've been doing there. Okay, next one, Sam. Yes, Roddy, it is why weighted blankets work, and they really do work. If you have a child who is anxious, they say, some of them say, don't put this over a child all night. And our therapist said, actually, that's absolutely fine. And it got me an extra hour sleep in the morning, which is really important when it's between 5 and 6. So that it is amazing. You've got to be really careful about the weight, but certainly on children, this is what I was learning about with children. And then she often turns to me and says, you can do that too. And so I got one, and oh my goodness, it's beautiful. They really work as well. I think it probably gives me a better quality of sleep too. So the clang of happiness, I'll tell you what that one is. So this is the one that the NHS came up with, nothing to do with climate change, is connection, learning. Not agency. That one is activity, noticing, and giving. Okay. Now I've changed that slightly for somebody who is interested in the environment or affected by environmental stuff, because that didn't really go far enough. It didn't address our needs. As often, if you go to a psychologist or something like that and they don't get environment, it kind of leaves you with a hole. There's something, something that they can't give you that you need, a big understanding that they don't have that we actually need. And that's the same for many areas of psychology. Now, I have to say, there are psychologists that are really keen to do environmental work, and there are specialists, but for 30 years, when I could have done with them, they weren't there. Right. So connection, that was the one. So activity, by the way, agency, I'm calling it agency, and in the happiness version, that is activity, it's exercise, which is really important. Agency and activity are really important, they kind of intertwine as well. So what I've come up with here they're similar. It's still clang, but it's very much for environmental people. So connection, again, because connection is so important. It's if you've got all of these, then connection is up here. And the reason connection is up there is because the vagus nerve, now this is something that is being studied now, and academics don't really like to claim anything about it yet, but some do. And they say basically what we need to do is we need to be with other people. So the connection is also to do with the vagus nerve. So what we're doing is called co-regulation. So a child, especially one who is adopted, fostered, who has had trauma before, has not learnt how to regulate. A child who was born with lots of oxytocin and all of the normal stuff and has been lovingly looked at and cared for all their life will have learned how to do that. And some haven't. And when they haven't learned how to do that, we need to spend a lot more time with them, very much knowing that we need to co-regulate them. You need to co-regulate until you learn to do it for yourself. So what a traumatic event or something where we feel that we are not being protected by the society, by the powers that should be protecting us, is a little bit like being a child who can't trust their adult. So we're kind of in the same sort of situation. And what we can do for that then is make sure that we're around other people and that we can co-regulate, that the other people in this situation is hugely, hugely important. So that there is something to do with the vagus nerve, which hasn't really been written about hugely yet, although it's been suspected and some certainly, can't remember his name, sorry. I've got a mega cold, as you can probably see, and my brain has gone somewhat. Bruce Perry has just written a book with Oprah, in fact, and he is somebody who has talked a lot about co-regulation and how we as parents and so on are the most important thing to our child. Obviously, this makes sense, but in that because of this co-regulation, we are teaching them how to regulate themselves. Regulating basically means being calm enough to take everything and being calm enough to enjoy ourselves. Okay, so that's connection. Connection's super important. Now I wonder, how long have I got left?
15 minutes.
It
Okay.
is 11 o'clock. Yeah.
Perfect.
So 15
Perfect.
minutes.
So what I'm going to do here is, let's have a look. There is a link that I'm just going to put in chat. And if anybody would like to, it'd be really interesting to hear what your idea. Now so there's a link that I've just put up. If you click on that link, and I'm not sure how many of you at this time in the morning and, you know, on the first day of the conference are sort of awake or want to do this. But if you click on that link, you'll find something called Flinger. And Flinger is a place that we can put post-its, a bit like a board, like a flip chart. And we can put post-its on it. And I've put 5 sections on here: connect, learn, having agency, nature and notice, and generating and giving. And what you do is click on a color. Oh, there we go. You've got the word, you can see the word square up there. So what will happen is if you write a message, just what you want to write on a post-it, and then press send, that will go down. So I've already done one that says food. What else is connection? I'm put co-regulation. Okay, and then I send that and it goes, and I put it in the right place in connect. So what I would be really interested in, I haven't put the right kind of word, is the kind of things that you might do, and then this will become a learning. So some people may have thought of things that they would do, and other people might do in certain places. So connecting, learning, having agency, nature and noticing, and being generative and giving. What might you do, or what do you do already that works? Yeah, try not to use the if you hit on the square, the word square, that shouldn't happen. Okay, so that's that. And also at the same time, we can show on the slides, we'll just show pictures. Basically, you're not missing anything by doing the Flinger. I'm not going to have any more words on the screen. But Sam, could you give me the next one? Lovely. So connection, in my experience, connection, I mean, it's just so amazing, isn't it? This was a street party. The top 2 are a street party that we arranged around flooding, and these people all have a river that goes into spate at the back of their houses. But it was astounding. Well, I say it's astounding. It's not actually astounding to me anymore because I've done so much work on flooding, but people don't think about it. We compartmentalize it, and we somehow fail to see this danger at the bottom of our gardens. It's very strange, until it happens, and then we wonder why nobody protected us. And in fact, you know, the Environment Agency are saying, if you've got a river, really think about what you need to do. And so this was beginning to start that conversation, but it wasn't a sort of a negative, data-driven conversation. It was all about love of the river. And they had kingfishers there. And there are swans, and people talked about what they loved about it. And then we learnt the history of it. And in the history, of course, we learnt that it had flooded before. And then there were lots of stories. And the power of story and connection is enormous. If we think about it, before writing, story was the only way that people learnt. And in fact, I used to live in Peru, and that is still the way that people learn what fields to plant what things on, depending on, you know, we know now if we test that field that it has an enormous amount of iron in, and therefore certain things will grow and certain things won't grow. And they have it all connected with the Apus, which are the gods, and that Apu had a daughter that wanted to marry that Apu's son, but then this couldn't happen and that couldn't happen, and somebody died, and therefore there's blood on that hill, and therefore no beans can ever grow again. And you go, well, blood, yeah, it's red, it's got iron in it, and there's something, I don't know if it was beans, it was something though, and everybody went, wow, yeah. And so even the children know that you can't grow this particular crop on that hill, you know, because that's kind of the blood of this story, and that's how they learn, and that learning is actually the whole village can learn that all at once. And the shaman holds that story, and the story is what has gone through, well, generations, for hundreds of years, and it's still used. I mean, I heard it when I was there, so, and even I learned. So the fact that I can go to Peru and know that you can't grow a certain thing, apart from, I can't remember what the thing is on that mountain, is ridiculous, but it is about the power of story. Story really connects. So I've got, yeah, family here, family having outings, physical on the beach, and that comes to one of the other ones. Okay, what have we got here? I'm just going to look at the flinger. Get it a bit bigger. Beautiful. Okay. Lovely. So things like open water swimming. And what you'll find is the ones that really work for you probably are hitting a number of these at the same time. There are some incredible things that you can do. So gardening, somebody's got gardening. So gardening in a group context where you have connection with others, you're in the garden, you're doing exercise, which is the activity part of action. You have agency, because as environmental people, we know how hugely important that is. It's pretty much everything. And you're learning, because you can't fail to go to, especially, you know, an allotment day. For me, there'll be somebody that tells me something I've never heard. Amazing. And generating, effectively, that is generating a whole load of people who are beginning to understand and really understand the importance of working. Oh, I love this. This is brilliant. Thank you so much for participating. So even though we can't see each other and physically hear each other, we've got a little bit of connection here going on. Okay, so going for a daily walk. Yeah. Yes, so as well, that would be an agency and activity. Agency is a really interesting, isn't it? So can we move on to the next one? Sam, lovely. So learning and curiosity. These are, the first one is Jodrell Bank, as some of you may recognise. And in this group of people that you see there in front of you are some senior civil servants who couldn't wait to have their photographs taken here. So although, you know, people know about Jodrell Bank, there is still that childlike excitement. And we were in a room which had huge glass windows, and we could see every time it moved. And so the presenter was actually the one facing it and would suddenly go silent and go, oh, it's moving. And everybody would turn around and have a little look, because it was really exciting. This is listening to space. It's amazing. And so that sort of learning and curiosity really it helped buoy the whole workshop and conference. So some of these people are the public, some are specialists, and some are, you know, senior civil servants who, you know, you would think would be much more staid than that. But no, nobody is. It's all hugely exciting. The next one is diplomats learning about, that was a workshop that I did. There we are. I'm the one with the long hair in the middle sitting down. And that was doing, again, it was a climate change conference. It was learning, it was curiosity. How do we work together? That was in Argentina, and lots of diplomats. There were diplomats there. There were climate change activists, and this was back in the 90s. No, early 2001. That was. Okay, and the next one, well, the Incas. My goodness, that's where I was living in Peru. What a lot to learn from that as well. So, next one, please, Sam. Agency and action. Now, agency, the anger that I was talking about before, must not just be quelled. That's really important, that it's not just quelled, that we use it as a fire out of our bums to make us go forward. So I've put these pictures of the monkeys in. I came across those in the Amazon. And the people doing that said, you know, we'd saved them, and you're never quite sure if that's true. And they were saying, we want people to come and have a look. This is, you know, our flora and fauna. But then, you know, the thing was in a dreadful state. It's difficult to know what to do sometimes. And then the next photograph, but it was an example of agency. So I felt, you know, very strongly, having been to the Amazon, I really need to do something about this. I mean, I was already working in the environment, but this just, they fuel you, don't they? The next one is people holding their hands up, doing a public engagement, the first ever proper citizens. So we didn't call it that, we called it public dialogue, and that was 2004. It was before they'd started doing it in this country, and it was in the EU. And so then I took that back to government and said, hey, you know, we can do it here. And we've, you know, started doing Science-Wise. And the next one, of course, you may recognize this. I think this is probably one of the early climate camps. So agency is often cooperative and communicative. Great. Sharon, how are we doing?
We do have a couple of questions, a little bit about how to action this in our communications. There's two questions. The first one is, how do we bring these concepts into conversations with those with very different views? So those who really don't get it.
Who don't get environment at all?
Yes, I presume get it means environment, or potentially actually if it's an anonymous question, but it could be referring to the clang system that we're moving through in terms of those concepts.
Right. Really what I'm talking about today is how to keep you safe, and then how you can therefore, through this kind of vagus nerve and through your calm, affect the other people. Because actually that's one of the key things. We talk about how it's not necessarily the written communication of this, that it will come out in that, but if we can keep calm and keep regulated as we talk to people, really, and then that gives this prefrontal lobe the ability to think and use everything that we've got, all of our knowledge. I think what I see a lot now, I have to say XR is very good at saying please don't do that, but not exactly explaining how you do it, how you don't get so excited and angry. So, but not putting that out is really great. Not getting too excited and angry, and all of that doesn't really work. Also, data just doesn't work. It bounces off. It kind of gives flan to the flame. So by telling stories, as I was saying before, and it can be personal stories, but also the main thing is listening. So I've done a lot of public dialogue and public work, and the first thing we always do is listen. Even if it seems that that conversation will spark absolute outrage, sometimes we have to look after outrage, have our arms around all of that outrage, and then say, yeah, right, it's hard. A beautiful video for this, of getting that right, is one that Brené Brown has done, and it's on the RSA shorts, and it's the difference between empathy and sympathy as well. So sympathy you may not think that's what you're doing, but if you can do what she's doing and calling empathy, then that will really work. But we have to do that listening before we can do any telling.
I think actually the what you're saying in terms of this being quite a focus as well of how to keep those in the room safe. Yeah. And it relates to the second question. Now we've only got a couple of minutes left.
That's
so
fine.
Shall I go with the second question?
Yeah, do.
It is a question saying, as a scientist who talks to children who may be very anxious or nervous, should we, or how could we be bringing techniques of calming to them?
Depends what age they are, but in nurseries, in good nurseries, they're doing a lot of this already as well. So check out what they already know, because you might be surprised. I was at a festival recently, and my son had kicked off, and I went around the corner of the tents and found a little boy going, and now out, and in, and my son was sitting there with crossed legs with his fingers like this. So that is already happening at that level. So just tune in and find out what they already know. Might not be a low level, actually. I mean, some will and some won't. And you can just chuck in little bits of information. That is a key. Small bits of information, but often, and also not a big step. I saw a really brilliant piece of marketing from somebody called Jane Shaw. She's great to follow. And there's all these lists of things. Reuse your bags, don't fly, everything paper, just lots of different things to remember. And if this is new to you, that's just, it's all overwhelming. And then she just crossed them all out and said, don't consume, or consume less. And really thinking about the simples is really important. What can we do to say all of that? I'm aware that we've got 1 minute.
We have 1 minute left.
It really doesn't matter. Sam, do you want to just flip through the other two and then we're there? There we go. Noticing nature. You know that. You've got that. You know how this works on your body. Next one, Sam. That's my nephew being very happy. Generative and give. Again, that's the sort of the group allotment feeling. This is somebody at the top doing a pond dip. The elation that we have of harvesting and then eating food. I mean, my son eats loads of food, loads of vegetables, because we grow it. He grows it. It's connection, isn't it? Okay. Is that the last one, Sam? Have we done them all? No, yes, it is. So go back to generative and give. Lovely. Are there any more questions?
None at the moment.
Okay.
But remember, we can continue conversations. You can use the people tag at the top there and direct message Alison. You can request a meeting to talk on. So let's keep communicating. And for now, it just leaves me to thank you, Ali, as our speaker and our facilitator for this conversation. Thank you for bringing your own professional and personal experience. Actually, that story really does help, and giving us some really tangible approaches to tackle these issues. And thank you to everyone here for participating in the chat, the Q&A, and the Flinger board. You can keep going with the Flinger board. I presume it's going to be there for a little while. So
yeah,
keep
a month.
at that. Wonderful.
At one point, I'll copy it and I'll give it to Savita, and then she'll be able to email it out along with the slides and all that kind of stuff. Lovely.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of the conference.